Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And it's Ben
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
Here we go. It's Kick-Ass.
Yep.
We're going to talk about the movie Kick-Ass. Oh, but it's certainly shot in Toronto again.
Yeah, this is just one of those things. I don't think this is relevant for the viewers, or I shouldn't say viewers, the listeners. But we last week did Scott Pilgrim versus the World. And the funny thing to me was rewatching Kick-Ass and watching Scott Pilgrim back to back was, these are both self-aware superhero movies that are kind of poking fun of its own genre, both set in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Those are kind of fun.
And Kick-Ass references Scott Pilgrim, the comic, obviously not the movie, but I found that interesting.
Yeah, I found that very interesting as well.
But yeah, I think the best way to frame this is unlike Scott Pilgrim, I don't know if there's any deeper meaning to it. I think it's just supposed to be a fun action movie.
This is my takeaway from this. I really just like, if there were takeaways from this, it's like, the stereotypical, oh, the hero's always in you kind of stuff or whatever, right? I don't think I personally don't think there's a deeper meaning in this. Yeah. I personally feel like this is just a really fun movie where everything works together really, really well and builds together really, really well. I just think of it as that, and it's just a lot of fun to me. There are some things that we're obviously going to talk about, but this is just it's overall to me a really, really fun movie with no real need for a deeper meaning.
No, I guess not. It is, I would imagine, like in the vein of a movie like the first Predator, where they're just like, no, just watch them kill the Predator. Yeah. That is it. That's the fun. That's the meaning. So I think right away, the movie is made for me in the sense that, like, much like Dave, I always was like, yeah, why aren't there superheroes? Like, it seems like I didn't think there would be super powered heroes. I just meant like, the concept of superhero, like people who dress up and that. And I guess realistically that is why there isn't, because vigilantes are like, no one likes the term vigilante. Like it would be so hard to be considered an actual hero. Everyone just be like, oh yeah, they're just vigilantes going around doing stuff. But as a kid, I was like, and even like when the movie first came out, I was like, that would be nice if there was a legitimate like person. And I don't even mean that it became like, oh, that's Superman, we trust him to say that. I just mean like someone that in earnest tried to be a hero. Like that would be interesting, to live in a world where someone like legitimately tried. And then the first time I liked it, and it worked even this time, is the first time he goes out, I'm like, yeah, see, why don't people, and then he gets stabbed. I'm like, that's why. That right there, like, that was a very effective way of like editing and like pacing, so that I was just like, holy shit, yeah. Like, because I felt like you really get swept up in like, he got the suit, he's there, and like those are the muggers that got him the first time. So you're like, yeah, like he's gonna get them back, and then they stab him. And you're like, oh yeah, like that's why no one does this, because no one has the resources to like protect themselves from that kind of stuff. In addition to having the time to just go around and patrol the city.
And I like the idea of just the simple idea of like, well, there are actual people out there that are trained, like Hit Girl and Big Daddy, to take on this kind of stuff. But the biggest differentiation between the both of them is that Kick-Ass is like he's self-promoting versus like Hit Girl and Big Daddy are like flying under the radar. Like, no, we got a mission to do. Like, attention is bad for us. You know, it's bad for this kind of thing. It's like, so drawing those parallels of like, no, there actually are in this universe, and this is how we're going to treat it, kind of deal, and that they would operate under the radar, which would make a lot more sense.
Well, I mean, I think I didn't really see it that way, but only because what is being made clear with Hit Girl and Big Daddy is that Big Daddy wants to kill the person who killed his wife. So he's not really into crime fighting. He is just on a vengeance mission. So the introduction of Kick-Ass is what like inspires Hit Girl and others to actually like attempt crime fighting, not just personal vendettas that they're going on. So the under the radar thing was only because no one else is trying to kill the person that killed their wife. Right.
But also the under the radar thing is also because it was for Hit Girl and Big Daddy, their motivation to do what they're doing is very, very self-driven. It's a revenge kind of plot versus Kick-Ass is like, no, let's just inspire people to be good. Let's do that. So like the idea of like advertising it versus like hiding it played out to be a very interesting angle from where the way I saw it.
No, but what I mean is they weren't doing the same thing, because the end of the movie is no, but I mean to the point of you can't compare him doing it, advertising it, and them doing it under the radar, because what they're doing isn't what he was doing. And at the end of the movie, they are advertising. That's the whole point, is that they've made it clear, like, we are out and crime fighting. So it's more he has affected them. They didn't affect him.
Yeah, he was the beacon that inspired other people to come out. Kind of.
Yeah, so that's what I mean, is that like they are doing something and realize everything they've built up and all those skills can actually help more people, and that is what inspires them to become crime fighters instead of just these two people on a mission.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I really appreciate that role of how that brought both story threads together. I really, really like that. That was really, really cool.
Yeah, because I feel like in a different movie, maybe Hit Girl would have like taught Kick-Ass how to fight, but really she's just like, I don't know, man, like use the like jetpack, because you can't actually be a part of this mission. Like, you're not good at this stuff.
Yeah, it's like we definitely can't use you in the capacity that we need to or want to, but we can put you as a gunner, and that was really, really cool. I like that. I don't know, I can't remember Kick-Ass 2, and we're not going to bring it up too much, because obviously we're not reviewing that right now, but it would, like, that would be, to me, the natural progression of where Hit Girl would go with that character, to train them and everything like that. It was pretty cool.
One thing that I would say that is successful about this movie is, even though I have seen the second one and I remember not liking it, I was like, I want to watch the second one now. Like, just because you like get so excited about the possibility of the world that's been created by the end of the movie, they're like, yeah, I want to watch a bunch of superheroes now. Like, I want to see what happens when now everyone's like, oh, okay, yeah, we can all be crime fighting. And the potential of Hit Girl like going to high school and people thinking they can pick on this little girl, and her being like, I can beat all of you up. Like, this is going to be fun. Like, and I know how that plays out in the second movie. I remember it well enough. Also, the first time I saw Daniel Kaluuya in the second one, so that also kind of makes me want to go back. But I don't think he really says much in it. He's on screen a lot, but I don't think he talks. But yeah, I just I really appreciated that about the movie, that I was like, yeah, I want to watch the second one, even though I know intellectually it's not great.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yep.
No, this is just a really, really fun, and I don't know if it's one of those things where, because it's not trying to be anything deeper than what it actually is, it works more in that regard of like, because it's poking fun of the of its own genre, and it's very, very surface level this time around to me. And I'm sure you could dive in deeper to get more out of it, but to me, I'm like, I was only interested in examining this from a surface level kind of thing. It really, really worked really well for me. I liked it a lot. It was good.
Yeah, that's the thing, is I really liked it when it first came out. But much like Scott Pilgrim, it did not do well in theaters, and I don't really know why. It's that seemed like I did watching it now. Even I'm just like I don't get
So I
what
have a
like people
theory.
don't like about this.
So I have a theory as to why this didn't do better or whatever. I just feel like in any kind of industry, there's always like a new fad kind of deal, right? In the movie industry around this period of time, and this is why we have this podcast, was the fad was comic book heroes, super movies, and all that kind of stuff. Now, I feel like the fad was that every studio needed to find properties in order to capitalize on that. So they signed and produced and like greenlit a whole bunch of things that generally weren't as well thought through, just to see what would, like, they threw a bunch of shit against the wall just to see what would stick. And to me, it was like, oh, Kick-Ass, even though it was a genuinely good attempt at something like that, and it could have gone, it had the legs to keep going. I liked where it was going. I think what ended up happening was at this point in time, it was becoming more and more clear that the DC Marvel properties of comic book stuff was being at the forefront, and then there's a scaling back. And this is why I see like less of the Kick-Ass Scott Pilgrim stuff around this time and age, around the 2020 era. That's my theory as to why. It's just pure business standpoint of like, yeah, let's capitalize on this. Okay, well, that didn't work out as well. It wasn't as profitable. Even though the budget for this was only like 28 to 30 and it produced like 96.2. It was, I mean, in terms of return on investment, it was
that did well, but it wasn't like
what it was. But yeah, that's just my theory of like why this didn't go further than where it really did.
Well, I mean, it got a sequel. That it's not that so I don't know about the business side of things, because business side, as you said, there was great return on investment and they made a sequel. But I just mean like in the zeitgeist, it was kind of like, oh, people weren't going to see it. The love for this comes from people watching it after the fact.
Yeah, it's a cult classic. It's developed more of a following after its theatrical run.
Because I think there was a lot of people like us who would have seen this movie anyway.
Yeah.
It just wasn't like a widespread, like in that sense, yeah, not breaking the 100 million mark, which means like repeat business and everyone goes to see it. Because I do think it was just like people like us who would watch this material regardless. And it
was one of those things where even then, back then, during that period of time when it originally came out in 2010, I don't know if it was one of those movies where I liked it. I know I remember liking this movie, but I don't remember if this was the movie that I liked enough to tell people to go out and watch. Like, you know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh, you got to go check out. Like, I remember like when Endgame came out, it was one of those movies where I was like telling people that didn't even like superhero movies, I'm like, no, you should give this one a shot. Like, this one's huge. It's crazy. It's like, go watch it kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
I would promote people to do that. But then this one, I don't think I definitely didn't have the same response. I don't remember at least, but I love it. It's such a good movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do know that like it's good for Mark Miller who wrote this, because I feel like this was the beginning of him and Matthew Vaughn like just making comic books with the intention of making movies out of them, because that's what Kingsman was.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure, Kick-Ass 2 was just like, yeah, I'll make it, and then they'll make the sequel out of it. And I don't know what's happening with it, but that was kind of what the deal with Netflix was, is that you would be making comics. I know it was more the universe he'd created, but I feel like there was like some kind of idea that he would be making comics that they would keep adapting through Netflix, which
I feel like Netflix has that Umbrella Academy property, and then they were just kind of like, maybe we needed to. But I mean, it feels like they have the Umbrella Academy property, and then like they're trying to capitalize on that too. I mean, it makes sense from a streaming standpoint. Streamers are doing the best.
I mean, my point was more that like this is another shift that I think is interesting to note is that up until this point we were just watching movies that were adapted from comics that maybe the writer was like, oh, maybe they'll make a movie out of this, but they were just writing their stories, and then someone else was like, oh, that's good. Like, I mean, yes, we understand capitalism, like, oh, let's snatch up things so that we have properties to adapt. But this is a moment, and maybe there were times before, but this is like a moment for a specific writer where it was kind of like, oh, I can be in the business of writing things specifically so they can be adapted later. So writing with that in mind, knowing like, okay, well, what can happen if they may turn this into a movie. So I just find that interesting and noteworthy in terms of why we are covering this movie in particular, considering it wasn't like a widespread hit. And business-wise, yes, it made enough for them to justify doing a sequel, but Matthew Vaughn didn't even come back for that, and it was not great. But it was profitable enough for them, mostly due to the low budget initially, which this time around I'm like, oh yeah, I can see the low budget for just like some of like, there was one time where I'm like, oh, is he sitting in front of a painting? I'm like, oh no, that's supposed to be the sky behind him. Oh, interesting. But yeah, like now that you said that's a $28 million budget, I'm like, oh yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. Like there's certainly shots here where I'm like, yeah, this was definitely a lower budget kind of thing. You can see it for sure.
Yeah, which is fine. It still works for what it is.
It works. Yeah, it definitely works. I mean,
yeah.
But you know what I feel like the interesting thing is going to be is, and this is like a somewhat unrelated thing, but somewhat is productions like, well, specifically The Mandalorian right now, using the Unreal game engine for their backgrounds and stuff like that, making a big impact in a world of like immersive set design and all that kind of stuff. It really is making a big difference in regards to how we're looking at stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if that's going to change the game, because you can only assume that that technology at some point is going to get more accessible and like more affordable to everyone to use. I'm just wondering if that kind of technology is going to have a big impact in regards to these low to mid-level budget movies compared to the big blockbusters. I genuinely think there's going to be a point in time where, yeah, that's going to be the case. And I'm just wondering, like, even though this movie, like, you can tell, yeah, they cut corners for, like, they save money. You can see where they save money, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, in the future, will it be less of a case with that kind of technology applied into this? It was just an interesting thought that I had while watching this movie. It was just like, okay, that would be a better shot of a rooftop shot had it been with the Unreal Engine or something like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I don't have much to say on that though. It's kind of just
there's not much to say. That's just like, oh,
yes.
I'm looking forward to this in the future if it becomes more affordable to filmmakers.
That seems like way down the line, because right now it's Disney's property, so yes. I don't know that it would actually become available to everyone, because they have an edge now.
Oh yeah, 100%.
They can do stuff that, like, it's their proprietary stuff. So yeah, like they'll keep that to themselves for as long as they can.
Right.
And it would be
good for anyone with a Disney Plus subscription, because apparently, according to the shareholders meeting, that's what they're pushing everything towards right now, or the majority of their resources towards, is streaming stuff.
Well, we'll see. I don't know. And also, when this comes out, who knows what this thing will be.
Yeah. But back to Kick-Ass, though.
Yeah. I think, well, so the story is he really wants to be a hero. And I don't even need any more motivation than that. Just like, yeah, you read a lot of comics and you're like, why wouldn't someone try? And then he gets so... I remember it being more of a brutal beat up, but he gets hit by a car and stabbed. Mm-hmm. And so then they have to put in plates. He makes the comment, I look like Wolverine now.
Yeah.
And so it's not that he's stronger. It's just he feels pain less than he normally would. And he even says like, oh, it still hurts. It's just he can take a little bit more pain than a normal person. And so that gives him the ability to, as Nicolas Cage said, more get his ass kicked than kick ass.
Yeah.
But still gives him a bit of an advantage. And that as you mentioned, brings Nicolas Cage and Chloe Moretz Grace's character out of what they were doing, which is a pretty self-contained thing about revenge. And unfortunately for the Big Daddy character, leaves them open to get killed, but also gives Hit Girl she'll never have the childhood she deserved, but it gives her a chance to be a bit more well-rounded, which is the saving grace, I get, not of the movie in that sense, but it is something I can hold on to in terms of an arc for somebody, is the Hit Girl arc, where it's kind of like, the interesting thing about her character is that she has a father, but that father is robbing her of a real life.
Yeah.
Like kind of being disappointed in her when she jokes about wanting a dog for her birthday. And having that his former partner Marcus being like, come on, you owe this girl a childhood, and that. So then the happy ending there is that Marcus takes charge of her and puts her in school.
And I am really I really like that ending a lot. I mean, like the idea of like, in this movie, it does a good job of like containing the fact that like, no, we fulfilled Big Daddy's mission. Like the mission was fulfilled and all this kind of stuff. It gives you a real sense of, like, if they didn't have the Red Mist teaser at the end or something like that, it really does give you a good sense of closure for that character. The fact that I was rooting for her to be with Marcus again after like Big Daddy dies, because I'm like, the in the comic book scene where Marcus like reads the origin of how that they became to be, it was such a good sweet story, that the fact that Marcus raised Hit Girl until she was 5, and then he gets out, and I forget like what age Hit Girl is supposed to be at this point in time, but the idea of her going back to him.
Well, she's high school age, so she's like 14 or 15.
Okay, so
yeah, because that's how the movie ends. She goes to high school.
Oh, okay. So sorry. On Wikipedia it says 11. So
someone made the comment she looks like she's 11, but the last scene is her going to high school, and Kick-Ass even says the whole thing is I have to look out for her.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But yes, everyone's aged down in the comics, and then when you do the movie, because of where Kick-Ass 2 goes, she can't be 11 because she kisses him in the second movie, and it needs to not be as gross.
Right. That's fair. That's more than fair. But yeah, it's I really like the fact that Marcus gets involved in there. I love that involvement there.
Yeah. I like that he wasn't sacrificed. I mean, if we are speaking about things that kind of bum me out about the movie, is at least Marcus isn't a thug. Like, it seems like every black person in the movie is like has their hat turned sideways and is beating women, doing drugs, and like stealing from people. And
it's like, a very clear divide of what's going on there.
And I'm like, wait, how come again, other than Marcus, it's like, yes, don't get me wrong, there are white people doing bad things as well, but it's like, it's like 99% of the black people seen on screen are bad guys.
Yeah, and the like, white people that are doing bad things on screen, they're made to look like stereotypical like criminals, like the bad tattoos on
there's the mafia, and then there's like the low level thug. They're made to look like this very stereotypical, like you would be like, my spidey senses tell me that person's a criminal. It's not like there's ambiguity in regards to that, versus in the people of color stuff. And this is one thing I noticed, and I'm glad you brought it up, was the fact that like every person of color was depicted as either a criminal or some other form of stereotype. There was no other depth in those portrayals, and that really bothered me for sure. Didn't like that part. So yeah, I liked that Marcus was the voice of reason.
Yes.
I love like it's interesting because he doesn't come back for the second movie. They went with Morris Chestnut. I'm just like, I mean, whatever, but like that's interesting only because that's Omari Hardwick, who has his own issues in general. Like I remember when Chadwick Boseman died, he was like, it was an honor being your greatest competition. I'm like, what the hell? Shut up. Don't say things like that. And then he had
Weird.
this awkward bit like moment with Beyonce where he like kissed her and like hugged, and it was just like, all right, man, like she just said hello. You don't need to like get all up in her business like that. I know it was positioned like, oh, that's Jay-Z's wife. It's like, no, no, no. Just don't get into people's personal stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
you're at an award show, just say hello. It's fine. So I mean, whatever. I liked him in this movie. I
Yeah.
know him from the show Power, where he plays Ghost, and I feel like in one point in this movie he says Ghost. I know it's not connected. I just like, oh, he'll go on to play Ghost. That's nice. But he was a bright light for Black people in this movie because I was like, like, and it sucks because he's also a cop. But I was like, man, like it is. I like, especially for that Rasul character they have, where like with Kick-Ass's girlfriend. I'm sorry, I don't remember her name. Is her name Kate in the movie?
Katie, yeah.
Katie. Yeah, like Katie's like,
that was one of the most ridiculous things
like
of the
he
whole.
beats her. He's like, it's one of like. I was just like, can it just be one thing? Does it have to be every bad stereotype?
Yeah.
It's so weird.
It just, I really didn't like that because none of that made sense to me at all.
Because
it's just like, I hated every part of it. I'm like, oh, this really feels shitty.
Like you said, there's no nuance with the white bad guys, but I'm like, I don't know. Like Mark Strong's character is really interesting. Like he genuinely loves his son. Like he makes a point of being like, let's go to the movies together. Like it's not even like I'm too busy for my son. Like this guy's like, no, I have a schedule, and part of that is carving out time for my son and to be there for him. Like some of his like non-black henchmen are pretty funny people and interesting people that get things to do, and then everyone else is kind of just one note. And I was like, that's not great. Like
I mean, Mark Strong's character in this is really, really good. I will say that for sure. I also like his like primary henchman. I like the part where he's like,
that's what I'm saying. Like these are like dynamic characters. Like they're bad guys, but like they have like inside jokes with you. Like that moment where he's doing the whole like, in France they call them batons, and we have his baton, but we also have baseball. And like just seeing like Mark Strong watch that and be like, this is so good. Like, don't you think he's good at what he does? Like this is fun.
Oh yeah. I really wish they gave more focus on that aspect of the movie, because that aspect of the movie does bother me, how like they really didn't bother to develop anyone else outside the main. And like the Rasul thing definitely bothered me the most because no part of that was believable to me at all, with Katie and Rasul being together.
Like you don't see them together, so it's like,
no, you don't.
Like,
and it's not like, and like I don't know how she describes him. Like, does she describe him as like an ex-boyfriend, or like does she describe him as
it's someone she's seeing? She was romantically involved. I don't know if she specifies boyfriend, but it was someone that she was.
Yeah, like literally no part
involved.
of me is actually convinced that there was a romantic connection between those two, like at all.
Well, I mean, as I said, you don't see them together because
they come from such different worlds, and I'm like, none of this is a real
thing. No,
it's
like, because of where she works. That's how she was in. Like that's how she encountered.
Oh, I get the needle exchange thing. Still, none of it makes sense to me because I'm like, okay, well, is he if he's a drug dealer and she met him at the needle exchange thing, then you would like, none of it made sense.
So this is where I actually, it does make sense to me to an extent. I just think the movie isn't. That's why I kind of preface it. Like I think it's just supposed to be a fun action movie, but the idea that even if you notice how she interacts with Dave initially, because she always wanted a gay best friend,
right?
She is a problematic character that the movie's not interested in. It's not interested in unpacking any of that, but it is there that she goes like, I don't think you're all the same, right? And like it's her putting it on him to give her permission to be shitty about what she wants to do, just as I can see her being like, ooh, like black drug dealer, like let's see where that goes, like that kind of like cultural tourism. That 100% makes sense to me.
I could see that now if you spin it from that lens.
As she's dipping in and tasting all bunch of stuff that because she can safely go home at that, and then this was someone that she couldn't safely go home from, and so he needs to stop that. That all makes sense to me. It's just the movie doesn't really look at her actions as bad either.
No.
It's kind of just like, nah, well, everyone's okay with her and she's hot, so that's that.
Yeah, and that's one thing I like. That's one thing I appreciated more from Scott Pilgrim than this is like the problematic behaviors were called out in Scott Pilgrim, but
Mhm.
versus this one, they were just like, oh, we're just gonna ignore them. We're gonna ignore the fact that he violates her trust, consent, and all this kind of stuff. Puts her in like very compromised positions because she believes he's gay, and he takes advantage of that. He really does take advantage of that. And all this
And I
kind of
think
stuff.
that's the only time the movie is like he takes advantage of it, but she's taking advantage of him by being like forcing him to be. And I'm not saying those are equal. I'm saying that's the only time the movie tries to like highlight.
Yeah.
Oh, she's doing something wrong too, but it's only so they can justify him being dishonest with her.
Yeah.
Because she's
And
being
there's also-
completely honest with him. It's just
Yeah.
it doesn't make it good. It's just
No.
she's honest. She's not being dishonest.
She's not being dishonest about her intentions, but her intentions are problematic.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And with him, he's being dishonest with his intentions, and his behavior is problematic at his core.
Mhm.
Third match made in heaven, if you think about it.
Yeah, yeah. I like Scott Pilgrim. The people who end up together, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just Scott Pilgrim actually was trying to unpack all that stuff.
Yeah.
This movie is just like, yeah, whatever.
I do like that. I do remember this one bit of dialogue where his one friend, not the other, not Evan,
Not
Peters,
the other Quicksilver.
not the other Quicksilver, the other guy.
Yeah, Duke something.
Yeah, I like the part where he's like, Clark Duke.
Yeah.
Where he goes like, the longer you wait, the worse it's gonna get. Like, like the fact that he's like, oh, you're not telling her you're gay and all this kind of stuff. Like, well, here's your, like, I like the fact that even in the comic book shop, he's like, well, here's your chance, and she walks through the door and everything like that, and he's the one that's like actually being like, no, I'm gonna be snarky about a lot of stupid stuff, but I'm actually still gonna call you out on stuff.
He's also pretty
like,
predatory, and also the movie proves him wrong because Kick-Ass does exactly. Kick-Ass is like, oh, you know what I can do? I will just confront her as Kick-Ass because the superhero always gets the girl, and then he's right. Whereas, and then Clark Duke is kind of like taking advantage of Katie's friend who got scared. I know she initiates a kiss, but it's kind of like, yeah, you're being weird with her. Like that also doesn't really sit well with me. But
well,
I did. Yeah, sorry.
A teenage boy that's just like, oh my god, a girl's into me. This is awesome. Like, I like that one scene where he's like, oh my god, he taps on his shoulder. He's like, yeah, check this out. He gives him time. Like, yeah, that's a teenage boy thing.
They are.
Really,
I believe them as teenage boys. I will say that stuff worked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I remember like all their interactions at the comic book shop and all this kind of stuff, and the idea of like them daring them to go up to talk to him and all this kind of stuff. It was like, that's all comic book, like that's all teenage boy stuff. I remember that so vividly. It's so funny to me, and it worked so well that I love that part of it for sure. Yeah, that was really, really good. But yeah, I want to. Yeah, her character, I forget what her name, Katie. Yeah, her character is just hugely problematic and sucks. And like that one scene where she's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go to her room uninvited as Kick-Ass, was just it worked so well for him. And I'm like, what the hell? This is bullshit. I don't like this. I don't like this at all. It's terrible. Reinforces the wrong message.
Movies like scenes like that are what reinforce. Like, listen, it's just an action movie. Like, it's just a fun action movie.
I get that, but what I'm saying is,
no, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm talking.
Consent is sexy. I'm just saying that. But yeah, so didn't love her character and all that kind of stuff. Hugely problematic from the get-go. The idea she's like, oh, I always wanted a gay best friend. I'm like, well, for what particular reason? That's not cool, man.
Yeah.
You're slotting people into like roles and shit like that in your life. But yeah, I did like Fogel coming back in this Red Mist.
Oh yeah. Christopher Mintz-Plasse.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say. You said there's a Red Mist tease at the end. There's not a Red Mist tease.
No, not the Red Mist tease.
He's the motherfucker at that point because it's a completely different outfit. Meaning you were right initially that Big Daddy's whole mission was completed and seen through. It just created a new villain, but it was completed. It wasn't like peeling open something.
Yeah,
again,
because I feel like because Red Mist's character, I feel like originally the intent behind creating Red Mist, or the drive for his character was, hey, I can actually interact with a friend. Like, this is one way my dad will let me have a friend, because it seems like he's so sheltered and all this kind of stuff. He generally tries, like, even when they're like, he uses Kick-Ass to find Hit Girl and Big Daddy and all that kind of stuff. He's like, no, he's cool, he's with me and all this kind of stuff, right? He's like, no, I think he was a genuine attempt to make a friend. And once that didn't go well, he's like, well, and his dad relationship. Like,
I
how
don't
do you
think it
feel
was
about
genuine. I don't think he was genuinely trying to make. I think because he spent so much time with Kick-Ass, he's like, oh, I have a friend now, and that
okay.
changed it. Especially since during that scene where they're dancing to Crazy, I'm sure I've seen it before, but I specifically clocked how he was looking at disgust at Kick-Ass for dancing, and it wasn't like he's so corny. It was just like, oh, like I have to hang out with him, until he realizes, like, what am I doing? Like, yeah, like I have someone who just gets to be with me, and that's the shift for him of like, oh, I have a friend now. I think he genuinely wanted to impress his father, because that was the conversation. Like,
Right.
I can be even more integrated into my father's life if I do this.
Yeah.
But then the problem for him is he's like, oh, but now I have a friend, and I don't know how that's going to play out.
Yeah,
But I don't think he went into it to make friends. I think he went into it because he was like, oh, this is a way my dad will let me just join.
Yeah, I feel like you're right about that. I wanted to get your take on that, whether or not it was like, oh, I want to find this excuse to make a friend in Kick-Ass, or if it was just like, oh, I made a friend, but I want to make my dad happy, which is his primary motivation. And then he's like, at the end of it, he's like, no, but I also made a friend. Hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is the interesting thing in this movie. Both Red Mist and Hit Girl don't see their fathers as these pain points, even though they should, like, realistically. I like that it's kind of like, oh, they are joining in just out of, like, they respect their parents so much that they're like, yeah, I want to. And yeah, don't get me wrong, obviously he gets upset when it's like, oh, you're not going to let me do this even though I'm 18. That's typical teenager stuff. Like, that I understand, but it is, both of them genuinely like their fathers and want to be, like, a part of what they do.
Yeah, they're seeking approval.
They shouldn't, but they
worth
do want to.
Stuff. Yeah, they idolize their father figures, despite the fact that their father figures are.
Like, they're not. It doesn't. I mean, maybe we're already watching them once they've hit Stockholm syndrome, but it never feels like Stockholm syndrome.
That's true.
While you're watching the movie.
That's true.
Which it's an interesting play on it that I like, that they give that moment of, like, it's not like Hit Girl is begrudgingly doing anything, or Red Mist is upset at the point where it comes down to it, and he's like, oh, like, you're going to still kill my friend. Like, he's like, oh, that's not something I considered.
Yeah. I feel like with Hit Girl, she just genuinely doesn't know better versus Red Mist. I feel like he knows better. He knows there's a different world, but he's like, because he's in the position he's in as the mobster's son, he's living a sheltered life. He's desperately trying to have some normalcy. So he, like, Red Mist knows better, or knows a different world at least, and is trying to actively get into that world. Because that one scene in the beginning where he's like, I dare you to try to talk to him, and that big bodyguard at the comic book shop is like, what are you doing? Fuck off, kind of deal. It, like, that to me, the look on his face is like, oh my god, someone actually wants to talk to me. And then, like, the bodyguard just blocks. Is like, no, go over there. I felt bad for him in that sense, where he's like, you could tell he does definitely want just a friend, as well. He does. As, like,
I just don't know if he knows what that looks like.
Oh, I don't think he does at all. But he knows.
No, but that's what I meant. Like, you were saying that he knows better, but I don't think he does. I think
I should say he knows better. I should say he knows of a different world. Versus, I'm not convinced Hit Girl knows of a different world, because it looks like Hit Girl's been homeschooled.
Right. So he knows there is a different thing. But he's not like, yeah, okay.
That's what I'm trying to say.
It's like he knows there is a world outside of America. Hit Girl probably doesn't know there's a world outside of it. I know that's not exactly what I'm saying, but I'm just trying to, because he can conceive of something outside of what he is doing right now. It's just he doesn't know about it. Like, he doesn't know the details or anything. He's never experienced it. It's just an idea to him. It's a theory. Whereas Hit Girl is so entrenched that she's just like, no, this is it. This is life.
Yeah, this is what my mission is, or what life is, or all this kind of stuff. I even like the idea of like when the scene after Big Daddy dies, and her and Kick-Ass are driving the red mist mobile or whatever it is. They were like, how are you gonna take care of yourself? And she only thinks about the immediate future. She's like, I took care of you. He's like, no, but what about money and stuff? And I think she throws a line of dialogue. It's like, I got a couple $1 million. I don't know if that's real or if that's just like me fronting and trying to protect myself or whatever.
No, I think she really does have that money.
That's probably true. But I'm just like, it was just an interesting scene to be like, no, there's other things other than your physical safety that you have to worry about now. And that was a good scene. I think that was really, really good.
Yeah. Or when they were like, let's go pack, and all she did was pack weapons. And he's like, no, like clothes so that you can like go somewhere.
That's a toothbrush, man.
Yeah. I think she has money because when she helps him out with Rasul, she just takes their money. And I don't really know what's being done with that other than some kind of war chest style, like this is money for a rainy day type stuff.
Yeah, I just feel like that was one of those things where it's like, listen, if we're gonna do this, let's take the money to restock our weaponry or stuff like that. I felt like it must be something like that, because other than that, I'm like, and that's why I'm like, yeah, these aren't genuinely good people because they're stealing the money. Like a genuine good guy would be like, no, I'm just taking the drugs off the street and I'm gonna like destroy the drugs. And get rid of the drug money or something like that.
But yeah, but that makes sense to me because, as we said at the top, they're not crime fighting. They have a mission, and that money will help them complete their mission.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the payoff for the bazooka, though. I remember seeing that thing and being like, that thing better be used. And it gets used in the best way possible.
They shoot. Is that what they shoot? What's his face with? I don't remember his
Mark
name.
Strong with him.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember his actual like character name.
Yeah.
Hold on.
I just like the idea, like he just goes through all the men and all the snitches and all that kind of stuff until like the head henchman's like, I'm not saying that there's a superhero, but they are saying there's consistency in everything that they're saying. Mm-hmm. Maybe we should entertain that. And then he immediately gets sold on the idea of Kick-Ass.
Frank D'Amico, yeah. No, I love every time they're interrogating someone. It's like, so Batman came, and he's like, no, I never said Batman. I said he looked like Batman. He's not Batman. It's like, oh, so you're saying Batman did this to you? And he's like, no, I'm not saying Batman did it. And then the scene you were talking about later, where he's like, I mean, there's something to what he says. He's like, oh, so superheroes? Like, I mean, it doesn't have to be superheroes, but you should probably reconsider your stance on what happened here.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I really like that character too. He says some really like there's that one scene where he's starting to be like, I told you to find Kick-Ass, and he's like, listen, I got half our crew committing petty crimes just to bait him out, kind of deal. We're doing what we can without being stupid about it. And I'm like, I really like that interaction for some reason.
Really Big Joe.
Yeah, Big Joe.
Michael Rispoli. He's great. Yeah. He's great in this. But yeah, did you care or like that Nicolas Cage was doing Adam West as Big Daddy?
I didn't care. I
it's the only it's like one of the only performances by him that I like, and I'm pretty sure it's because he's doing Adam West.
Yeah,
I'm like, yeah,
because you're not a big Nicolas Cage person, are you?
I really question anyone who is.
Like, I'm a big Nicolas Cage person, but because I just enjoy watching the decisions that he's making from an acting standpoint more so than I actually appreciate it. In this
is
movie,
what I'm saying. Like, when someone says they're a fan, I'm like, that's funny for 2 seconds, but like, do you actually think he's good, like worth your time? Yeah,
and see, that's the funny thing is like, and I love that episode of Community when Abed's trying to be like, is he good? Is he bad? And he goes through all these different directions and no one can really tell, because I'm like, yeah, like, the funny thing about Cage, and like, and Stacey and I have this discussion a lot because she loathes him and I love him, and I've been like, let's watch Cage movies because they're just so ridiculous and they're just so much fun to watch. I approach it from that perspective. It's like the same perspective where I'm like, I really love watching wrestling, not because I love wrestling, but because it's a good time. It's a genuinely entertaining good time.
Yeah, but that everyone's on the same page, and like that is supposed to be theatrical and over the top. This,
whether or not he's a good actor in general, I would always have to say it's film by film by film. And in this one, he does one of the more consistent jobs. Like, he's very consistent in this one versus like in other ones where he's like really just going over the top for no reason whatsoever.
it's just
The
when
only
he's
time he
getting
goes over the
burnt to
top
death that I'm like, what the hell is he doing? Like, it never makes sense to me.
Yeah, the
But
only
like
time,
everything else, I'm like, okay, good.
yeah, when he's getting burned to death, I'm like, this is Cage. This is Cage at its best.
Mhm.
And it really so that's why I'm like, yeah, this works for me. But for a lot of people, they'd be like, that shouldn't be how someone sounds when they're being burned alive. I'm like, nobody knows that. you can't tell me that.
No, but what I mean is, it's so comical the way it sounds that it is betraying the scene.
Oh yeah.
So that's why I'm like, I question anyone who's like, oh, he like I like Nicholas Cage, like, but like, why do you like someone who betrays almost every scene he's in?
Yeah.
It's not like, it'd be one thing if that's what that scene was building up to, but it's not. You're watching the brutal potential murder of your two big characters, so you shouldn't be breaking that. You shouldn't be breaking that.
It should. You're absolutely right. It should not be undercut by comedy. However, Cage, at this point in time, I'm just really, really, I guess, more obsessed with the idea of like, who continues to say yes to Nicolas Cage, because they keep allowing him to do these things in order, because
he doesn't do too many, like, again, this is a $28 million movie, so I don't think anyone's thinking like, oh, we're really taking a risk here. He's not in, like, he hasn't had another National Treasure or movie, like, he's not starring, or Sorcerer's Apprentice where it's like Nicolas Cage is the marquee name. He's not like, so to that extent, no, I don't, that's not a question for me, because he's doing a bunch of like movies that go straight to VOD or whatever. Like, I think the last thing he did was that like 3D Drive movie. Like, that was like the last thing that they were really pushing him being in it and being in theaters. But I understand where he sits in terms of how, like, the movies he does. It's just, I think that if, depending on the director, you can aim him in the right direction. This seemed to work because he made a choice everyone can get on board with, which is, I'm playing a version of Batman and I'm going to do it like the first version of Batman most people think of, which is Adam West. But like, perfect. Let him go. Let him do whatever. You don't have to do a lot to rein that in other than the fire scene. But like, yeah, otherwise you're kind of like, all right, man. Like, you can't live scene to scene. You have to like actually know what's going on, which is a director's job to, you know, craft or like help guide that in there. So yes, director to director, it depends. But
it really, it's wildly, it's just, Cage is one of those actors that I'm just constantly obsessed with, because you just never know what you're gonna get. He really, really does roll the dice for me a lot, and that like makes me really happy from the gambling side of things. But I'm like, and that's what I like about it. I'm just like, you never know if you're gonna get a consistent performance out of it, or you're gonna get something wild and crazy. And I really genuinely like that. It's just a lot of fun for me.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But I would not say like he's, and in the realm of the discussion of Nicolas Cage, I would say he's one of my most appreciated actors, because of the fact
one of the slap in the face of other real actors.
No, but yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm saying like, he's my quote unquote, if we accept the term guilty pleasure, he's my guilty pleasure actor, right? But that's not to say that I think he's the best actor whatsoever. I'd be like, no, I'd put other people in that category. I wouldn't even consider Cage. But out of the actors that I enjoy watching the most, Nicolas Cage is up there for sure, because of how wildly unpredictable he's going to be in every single performance. And it's awesome. It's so good. So he works really, really well for me in this movie. He really does.
But I mean, it seems like there's no way he can't work well for you in a movie.
No, there have been movies where it didn't work
if your
well.
thing is he's just unpredictable, then yeah.
Right. But they did manage to give him enough screen time that it wasn't all about his insanity throughout this whole thing, which was kind of perfect for it.
Well,
'Cause
it's not about Nicolas Cage's insanity. It's about Big
Exactly.
Daddy's insanity.
Well,
Yes.
Exactly. But that's why I liked how they like the amount of Cage in this for sure.
He is very well used in this movie. As I said, it's like one of 3 performances where I'm like, yeah, that was good. I'm glad it was him. This worked out.
Yeah.
I was thinking that he knew Red Mist was a bad guy, just the way he kind of was like, oh, and Red Mist is here. But it looks like he was genuinely surprised that Red Mist shot Hit Girl out of a window. I was just like, I thought he had a plan for that. Interesting.
Yeah, that part was very interesting to me, how he was like, oh, come to my home address with this new person, when like in the beginning,
like I thought he was, I mean, yeah, it seemed like he was upset about that, but it was just he was upset about it, not that he was like, oh, this is the son of the person I've been tracking for years. I'm going to get him.
Yeah. It was a very, very interesting moment to me, because I'm like, that seemed to be a big lapse in judgment on his character's part. You know what I mean? It's just like, you're inviting someone that you don't know to your home address, and you're letting people know your home address, because like, I like the part where they're like, they find Kick-Ass, Hit Girl, and like Big Daddy, and they're like, they talk to him. They're like, we like you, but we don't trust you. We're going to keep watching you and all this kind of stuff. And then, you know, that was really, really cool to me. I like that part. But then from that, because I think after that one scene, Kick-Ass decides like, this shit got too real. I can't do, because that was after the Razul scene, right? Where he sees like a whole bunch of people get murdered and slaughtered. And he's like, this shit just got way too real. I'm going to give this up. Right? So I don't know how from that he earns their respect again.
I think they just know that he's in it for the right reasons. He's not trying to, but also that wasn't what bumped for me. My thing was like, how is it that Red Mist can operate at all, considering everyone is constantly looking at that character when he's not Red Mist? Like, they're constantly observing him like he's like in a like cage at the zoo. Like they're always betting on who's going to talk to him and like paying attention to him, in addition to Big Daddy and Hit Girl, who are observing that guy's father all the time. You'd think they'd be like, oh, that's like, I feel like someone would have been like, oh, you're D'Amico's kid. Like, it just feels like Kick-Ass, what works is he's a nobody. Like, no one, who cares? But like, Red Mist doesn't change his voice. He's not like, yes, he put red hair in, but it's kind of like,
wig on.
You could have, it's you with a wig on.
Yeah,
I get that's how superheroes work in general, but it's just usually the Batman thing is he's in the dark, he's got a mask on for the most part, and like, realistically, what do criminals care that he's Bruce Wayne in that sense? Like, I'm like, what, is Bruce Wayne beating me up? It's kind of like, what? By that point, it's too late. Who cares? Whereas, and Superman, I get it. The whole thing is you would never expect Clark Kent to be the cool Superman character, whatever. Subverted expectations. But this one, I'm just like, this is someone that people are constantly observing and like tracking, and he's able to just keep going as if they're like, oh yeah, I mean, I guess it's just a guy named Red Mist.
Yeah.
And we don't ask people's real names because that's superhero code.
The thing that was really, really interesting, and I get why they did this, and I like that it was like, I need these things, I need one of your guys that you don't care about. And I like the fact it's like, no, that guy? Yeah, he's a skis. Get that guy.
Oh, because I remember he was like, it could be Joe. He's like, why me? He's like, okay, or not Joe. Maybe not Joe.
Yeah. Why me? What you got against me? It's like, oh yeah, he's a skis bag. Take him. I really like that. I like the part that like he as a solo guy that was unknown and all that kind of stuff, brought down such a big name relative to make news and all that kind of stuff, was just such an interesting thing, because it was just like, it raised no one's flags to be like, who the hell is this guy? Like, Kick-Ass started, and he's like, he got this one viral video, and he's like finding cats on the street, and this guy, he just came on, and he's got the Red Mist mobile, which is not inconspicuous whatsoever. That's trying to draw so much attention. And then the idea of like, uh, him bringing down someone big. One thing I did appreciate in this movie was how the mob boss and the Mark Strong's character and the crime not the crime boss, the police department guy, how they were like, what do you want me to do? You pay me to stop catching criminals, and they pay me to do this or whatever. So it was like, this is a perfect match. So the idea of like, yeah, that's why no cops were actually looking for these guys, because that line of dialogue explained. I really like that piece in this film. It worked really well. Had a lot of fun.
Agreed. That works.
Yeah.
It works. I don't know why I thought his dad had more to do, like Kick-Ass's dad. He kind of just there. I guess he like, you were found naked, like it's okay, son, don't worry about it. But I don't know why I thought there was more to do. Maybe he has more to do in the second one, and I just was conflating them.
Yeah, I can't remember his role at all in the second one, but yeah, for this one, he just ends up being like, hey, they said they found you naked. I really appreciated that. He's like, hey, like, to break down that toxic masculinity things, like if they did, you can tell me, you don't have to hide it, that kind of. I really like the fact that they were like very supportive dad, even though like they depict him not like visually as being kind of distant. He's like, oh, we're eating breakfast together. There's that shot of us, because I don't really remember any real scene of him interacting with his parents other than the fact that, oh, I had no special thing. Like in that beginning, it was like, I have no special origin story. I was bitten by a radioactive spider. My parents were killed. My mom died of an aneurysm at breakfast or something like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't really build up the parental thing. So that one scene where the dad was there and being supportive at the hospital, to me was a really, really cool thing. It was like, that says like, no, they don't talk a lot, but they got a healthy relationship. It's cool.
Yeah. As healthy as can be. My assumption is his dad's probably still in the days of like, oh, my wife just died out of nowhere. It wasn't like a build up to it or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. As healthy as it could be after that. But yeah, it's a fun movie. It works for me. It's a very self-aware movie, and it pokes fun at itself in a really, really cool way, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's poking fun. I don't know if it's poking fun at itself.
Well, yeah, it's poking fun, but not poking fun at itself. Yeah.
I don't know if it's that self-aware. I do know that it is it's aware to the extent of like, aren't superheroes crazy? Like, this is a wacky world. It would be. But yeah, I think it was a fun movie. I really didn't like how most of the black people were portrayed. I wish the Katie character was a bit more explored. I know really realistically there's no time for that, but it seems like a weird thing to flag and then just leave it be. Because they certainly flag it, and then it's just kind of like, well, some people are shit like that, I guess. So yeah, let's probably rate this. I think. Yeah, let's do it.
All right, am I going first?
Go for it.
I'm dropping an 8 on this.
Nice.
I really like this.
I am giving it a 7.
Nice.
It is a solid, fun action movie.
It's a solid, fun, good time. One thing I will say that I find that really, really weird, that no one was upset about the people of color depictions, but were only upset about the fact that Chloe Grace Moretz uses the C word in the movie. Like, well, there was like, yeah, we didn't like the amounts of violence, but that there was so much more vocal outrage about the fact that she drops a C bomb when she was 12 years old at the time. And I'm like, who cares? And the irony to me, I'm like, the biggest complaint at the time came from the Australian Family Association, where I'm like, really? You guys are dropping C bombs all the time.
Does it actually surprise you that no one cared about the mistreatment of people of color?
It surprises me. It doesn't surprise me as much now, knowing as much as I know now. Okay. But like, I just find it. I shouldn't say surprises. I should say it's really telling that people were more upset about language than they were about the people of color thing. I think that is very telling.
Especially if you, well, as you said, I'm not saying there are no people of color in Australia. I know that's definitely the exact opposite. It's just, I would imagine a lot of people leading that were white. So what do they care about mistreatment of people of color, especially considering the country they're in and the history that country has?
Correct.
And the history of most countries and how people of color are treated in those countries. So that there's no kind of, that's just kind of like, that's life.
You're right. I shouldn't say surprising. I should say it's
disappointing, but it's also expected that you could watch that whole movie and be like, I can't believe that little girl said the C word. I can't believe that little girl was robbed of a childhood and started stabbing people up all the time. And had to watch her. I don't even know. She didn't see her mom die, but she definitely watched her father burn to death. And it's all played for jokes.
Like, that's way more. I'm like, but yeah, sure, a C-bomb. Cool. Like, let's get all up in arms about that. Like, that's
definitely a completely different type of podcast discussion. But I agree with you that is telling.
It's very telling. Telling's a better word to use there, for sure.
But I would never expect anyone outside of people of color to be upset about that kind of thing, and especially in that climate, like 2010. I'm sure there were people that just were so numb to it that it was just like, wow. Okay.
Because there's
and I mean, because I don't think there were probably no one, but I don't think anyone like mobilized to say anything about it. But I'm sure there were a bunch of people upset about the portrayal.
It's definitely criticisms now that are becoming more mainstream, which is nice because people are now at least being more aware of it. So hopefully, again, like I've said in previous episodes, I always consider Hollywood now at the breaking point of post-Me Too era of what's going to happen from a video film kind of style. Like, are people going to pay attention to a lot more of those things? And it appears to be so. Whether or not that's going to have the legs to keep going, we'll wait and see. But it's hopeful that people are paying attention to it more.
It is good people are paying attention to it. I agree.
Cool.
Well, I don't even remember if I did this last time, but as you said at the beginning, we are part of the That Shelf Podcast Network. What does that mean for you? Well, it means that you can head on over to thatshelf.com and we have got great podcasts like Bad Game Movies, Black Hole Films, Changing Reels, Composers, No Budget Nightmares, what a great theme song, and more. So please head on over there. If you'd like to listen to older episodes of Spoiled Rotten, please go to tdferything.com/spoiledrotten. Our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. Our Twitter is @tdfspoiled. So please get in touch with us. And if you're wondering, hey, well, I was on That Shelf. I was on tdferything.com. How can I just have this come to my phone instead of me going to it? Well, we are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Radio Public, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, a whole bunch of things. So please rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thank you very much for listening.
Boom.
Bye-bye.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.